When conventional computers gave up in the face of the most complex problems, quantum computing prevailed and began to break through what was once thought impossible. It all started with a simple experiment in the laboratory of the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States. A quantum processor based on calcium ions cracked a mathematical problem in just a few seconds that the best classical machines would have considered unsolvable for thousands of years. That was the moment when simple equations stopped being simple and cryptographic systems once thought to be invulnerable began to fall apart at the seams. For the first time, the world witnessed a quantum computer equipped with just a few qubits demonstrate what is known as quantum supremacy. In the famous experiment by Google, the Sycamore processor, operated by a team of physicists led by John Martinis, completed calculations in just 200 seconds that, according to estimates, would have taken classical supercomputers more than 10,000 years. Scientists from different parts of the world came to verify the results. No one was able to replicate the calculations using traditional technologies. This was not just a scientific triumph, it became a true sensation, stunning everyone who had believed in the absolute security of the most complex computational problems. This was followed by new tests. A Chinese team led by physicist Pan Jianwei introduced the quantum computer Zhujiang, capable of solving multidimensional problems so quickly that even the most powerful classical supercomputer, Sanwei Taihulite, could not keep up with it. In a boson sampling experiment, Zhujiang completed a task in 200 seconds that would have taken a classical supercomputer more than 600 million years. Suddenly it became clear, secret algorithms protecting financial transactions, electronic correspondence, and intelligence data could be cracked in a matter of minutes. Researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology demonstrated in practice how Shor's algorithm running on a quantum processor was able to factor a huge prime number used for data encryption in less than a day, something that was previously considered virtually impossible without the use of unattainable resources. A real panic broke out in major corporations. Banking systems protected by RSA encryption found themselves under threat. Financial giants invested millions of dollars in urgent research into new encryption methods to defend against quantum hacking. In the public sector of the United States, the first quantum-resistant protocols were introduced to protect especially valuable government data. While some were struggling to create unbreakable algorithms, others began using quantum computers in scientific fields where classical methods failed. In IBM's laboratory, a quantum processor based on superconducting qubits simulated the behavior of complex molecules, enabling solutions to chemical problems that had remained unsolved for decades. Scientists were able to model the interactions of a caffeine molecule, a task that would have previously required hundreds of years of computation on conventional supercomputers. However, the most high-profile achievement was the real-world application of quantum computing to find vulnerabilities in cybersecurity. At the Sandia National Laboratories, they simulated an attack on a secured city water supply system overnight, uncovering vulnerabilities that had eluded top experts for years. All of this demonstrated that quantum computers not only could theoretically break through conventional boundaries, but were already showcasing their power in practice. And despite all the successes, the battle for supremacy in quantum technologies was only intensifying. What began as a series of laboratory breakthroughs quickly turned into a global race where each new victory could determine the future of the entire world. It was at this point that the competition moved beyond the confines of laboratories and escalated into a large-scale confrontation between the world's major powers. The first alarming news of a quantum breakthrough flashed around the globe like lightning, causing a stir not only among scientists but also in the offices of world leaders. In Washington, the National Security Council was urgently convened, where NSA agents reported on the unacceptable risk. Now, not only could other people's secrets be decrypted overnight, but even one's own ciphers had become vulnerable. China, barely recovered from the sensational success of its team led by Pan Jianwei, began accelerated scaling up. In the laboratories of the University of Science and Technology, an even more powerful optical quantum processor was being built, operating on hundreds of photonic qubits. In Beijing, billions of dollars were urgently invested in creating a national quantum-secured communication network stretching from Shanghai to the capital in an attempt to circumvent even the most sophisticated hacking attempts. At the same time, in the European Union, in the quiet laboratories of Dresden and Paris, engineers were working on the architecture of quantum processors based on ions and superconductors. The projects were receiving record-breaking funding. The technological sovereignty of an entire bloc of countries was at stake. The German team from the Max Planck Institute announced the launch of a linear chain of qubits based on Paul traps, claiming that their system provides a level of computational stability unmatched anywhere else in the world. In London, the government cybersecurity agency allocated hundreds of millions of dollars to research new methods of post-quantum encryption. At the same time, most laboratories signed strict non-disclosure agreements, even regarding basic technical details. Meanwhile, tech giants in California launched a real arms race. Google, IBM, and Microsoft competed for every breakthrough, increasing the number of qubits and improving error correction algorithms. The IBM team set a record by launching a quantum system in the cloud, allowing universities from around the world to conduct experiments without leaving their own countries. Meanwhile, their competitors at Google were working on the first quantum protection program for corporate data algorithms capable of outsmarting even future quantum hacking. In the Far East, Japan and South Korea began to pick up speed, focusing on developing processes using niobium-based materials and superconducting ceramics. The Japanese company Toshiba announced the creation of the first quantum key distribution line over a distance exceeding 400 miles. This set a new world record for secure information transmission. Korean engineers in Seoul focused on applying quantum systems in industry, starting with modeling complex chemical processes for the pharmaceuticals of the future. In parallel with major official projects, there was a covert confrontation between intelligence services and specialized agencies. NSA employees, together with the CIA, created a so-called quantum laboratory, where experiments on intercepting quantum communication channels were conducted at an isolated facility. Chinese intelligence agencies were implementing similar developments at the Beijing Institute of Advanced Technology. Operators from both countries carried out covert attacks on their opponents' test networks, trying to identify vulnerabilities in future systems in advance so they could exploit them in the event of a global crisis. Diplomats and economists found themselves drawn into a new round of the technological Cold War. At negotiations in Geneva, representatives of the 5 largest powers discussed a ban on the use of quantum attacks against critical infrastructure. However, everyone understood that such agreements are broken even before they are signed. Even small countries began hastily creating small clusters of quantum computing. India launched a program to train 1,000 specialists and invested hundreds of millions of dollars in its first university quantum laboratories. And Israel built its experimental center in the Negev desert. Meanwhile, the United States Department of Defense announced new projects for future military systems based on quantum computing, including accelerated decryption of satellite data and the development of autonomous drones with quantum navigation. In Russia, the State Quantum Institute initiated the creation of a multiprocessor platform to protect critical energy and infrastructure facilities, testing algorithms in conditions as close to real life as possible. This global race has led to the emergence of new alliances. Laboratories exchanged information through special quantum conferences, although subtle information wars often unfolded there as well. Spyware programs, so-called quantum worms, began to appear in secured corporate networks, gathering data for future attacks. The development of artificial intelligence for quantum computers became an independent field, and fully-fledged digital special force teams of highly skilled programmers were now searching for vulnerabilities not in the classical but in the new quantum world. But despite all the secrecy and tension, some quantum breakthroughs began to seep into peaceful spheres. Startups emerged, promising to accelerate the development of new drugs and materials, and joint research programs were launched, where competing powers temporarily joined forces for mutual benefit. However, every participant in this global race understood. Any new discovery could not only shift the balance of power, but also change the fate of billions of people around the world. Meanwhile, behind tightly closed doors of research centers, the struggle to be the first continued. After all, whoever gains true quantum power will be able to control not only the security of nations, but also the future of medicine, industry, and even human life itself. This means that the next chapter of the quantum revolution will begin where technology meets the eternal challenges of human health. The first attempts to apply quantum computing in medicine seemed like science fiction, but soon turned into a series of real breakthroughs. In research centers in Massachusetts, scientists set themselves the ambitious goal of fully decoding the structure of the protein responsible for the development of Alzheimer's disease. Traditional algorithms could not cope with the enormous number of possibilities, and the IBM Summit supercomputer would have required decades to solve such a task. A quantum processor consisting of just 50 qubits simulated the protein's behavior in a matter of hours. After verifying the results, the team at Harvard Medical School confirmed the discovered structure opened up a promising new path for drug synthesis. At the University of California, researchers used a cloud-based quantum service to test thousands of combinations of chemical compounds against rare types of cancer. A simulation that would have taken 50 years on classical clusters was completed in just 1 week. The result was a list of molecules that were immediately sent to laboratories for rapid synthesis and in vitro testing. Even the initial experiments showed that the effectiveness of some compounds surpassed existing therapy standards by several times. Several biotechnology companies, such as Moderna and Genentech, announced the launch of joint programs with quantum startups to accelerate the development of next-generation vaccines. Meanwhile, in Germany, a group led by the Max Planck Institute launched the Quantum Diagnosis Project for the early detection of oncological diseases. Using quantum machine learning algorithms aimed at analyzing medical images, the team was able to detect the tiniest changes in tissues that were not picked up by modern MRI machines. In the first 3 months of the project, diagnostic accuracy increased from 80 to 99%, and type I errors virtually disappeared. Medical centers across Europe joined the project, transmitting their data anonymously through secure quantum channels. The Asian region did not stand aside either. In Singapore, the National Hospital implemented quantum models to predict complications in patients in intensive care units. Experts note that the new system has managed to cut emergency response times almost in half and reduce the number of deaths by more than 25%. Further development of the system made it possible to automatically generate personalized treatment plans, taking into account genetic characteristics, medical history, and even the microbiome of each patient. In Canada, the D-Wave Company laboratory, together with the University of Toronto, began calculating the interactions between viral proteins and human antibodies. The first test was the fight against a new strain of influenza. The quantum processor was able to calculate possible mutations and suggest the optimal vaccine composition in just 12 hours. Traditional methods would have required at least several months for this process. As a result, the vaccine was synthesized and tested in record time, and disease control centers reported a sharp decrease in infection rates among the population. American pharmaceutical giants Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson announced the creation of a joint research center in Seattle, where quantum computers operate around the clock. Their task is to identify vulnerabilities in pathogens, develop drugs with minimal side effects, and model the body's adverse reactions even before clinical trials are conducted. At this center, the approval process for new drugs has already been accelerated since data obtained through quantum simulations have been recognized by regulatory authorities as scientifically valid. Quantum computing has also made its way into genetic engineering. At the headquarters of a Silicon Valley startup, a team of scientists has introduced a new DNA editing platform where quantum search algorithms detect defects and instantly select ways to fix them. As a result, they managed to correct a rare genetic syndrome in a group of patients for whom conventional medicine was powerless. The standardized quantum platform was quickly purchased by the largest medical clinics in New York and London for diagnosing congenital diseases in newborns. At the same time, pilot projects were launched to introduce quantum supercomputers for managing large medical databases. The New York hospital network consolidated the results of millions of tests and medical histories into a single system. Quantum search made it possible to detect statistical anomalies in rare diseases that had previously been disguised as common symptoms. Thanks to this, doctors were able to identify the sources of new epidemics in advance and prevent their spread. While laboratories were exploring new frontiers in diagnostics and therapy, technology corporations on the west coast of the United States began developing smart implants capable of monitoring a patient's health in real time and alerting to the first signs of danger. All signal processing and medical decision-making were entrusted to a quantum processor based on superconducting qubits, which instantly analyzed tens of thousands of parameters from heart rhythm to blood biochemistry. Against this backdrop, it became clear the medicine of the future is not just becoming more precise, it is transforming before our eyes thanks to the quantum revolution. The world saw that quantum computing is breaking down old barriers, and even now it is becoming a reliable guardian of the health of billions of people. But as the saying goes, every famous medal has its reverse side. After all, new technologies bring not only benefits but also open the door to threats that we have yet to understand and stop. While banks around the world were still trying to recover from the shock of breaches in old cryptographic systems, quantum computers had already begun to disrupt the established order of the financial industry. The first real quantum blow was an attack on a small division of an international bank in London. A group of researchers from Oxford connected an experimental quantum processor to a public network and, within a few hours, managed to break through a complex chain of secure transactions that had been reliably hidden by RSA encryption. Verification showed that Shor's algorithm, implemented on just 100 qubits, found the private key faster than the most advanced computing cluster and at the same time unlocked access to thousands of encrypted transfers. After this incident, the largest central banks began urgently purchasing quantum random number generators for their internal security systems. The old way of protecting money proved powerless. In the United States, the Federal Reserve announced a transition to new quantum-resistant encryption standards, allocating more than $500 million to upgrade its networks. At the same time, in Zurich, Swiss banks formed a consortium to exchange quantum keys in order to ensure ultra-secure transmission of financial data. For the first time, transactions worth billions of dollars were protected not only by legal contracts, but also by the physics of elementary particles. If anyone interfered with the key exchange, the signal would automatically be destroyed and all hacking attempts were recorded in real time. A new era began on the financial exchanges of Western Europe. The so-called quantum traders connected their processes to global platforms and calculated the most complex trading scenarios in seconds, which previously would have required weeks of modeling. A company from Frankfurt, using a quantum model, discovered a hidden correlation between currency rate movements and weather anomalies in South America, instantly earning tens of millions of dollars on short-term contracts. In Singapore, quantum computing was used to predict systemic risks during the global economic crisis. Algorithms analyze the movement of hundreds of millions of trades per minute, helping banks adjust portfolios and save assets within just a few hours. At the same time, cryptocurrencies found themselves at the forefront of a new financial revolution. Bitcoin, which for many years was considered unbreakable, faced its first public attack. A researcher from Tokyo demonstrated a method for recovering a private key using a quantum processor and sent a transaction from a wallet that no one had ever been able to open using classical methods. The market instantly reacted with a drop, and the largest blockchain platforms began a mass transition to quantum-resistant algorithms such as lattice-based cryptography. At the same time, startups from Silicon Valley began developing new coin systems based on quantum secret sharing, where security is ensured by the laws of superposition and entanglement. If someone tries to hack the system, it simply erases all the keys with no possibility of recovery. Global payment systems did not stand aside. The international SWIFT system launched tests to integrate quantum channels for data transmission between the largest banks over distances exceeding 1,000 miles. The first quantum payment in history was made between New York and Toronto. A transfer of $20 million was conducted through a secure channel that cannot be intercepted even with a quantum supercomputer. After the successful demonstration, dozens of countries ordered equipment to set up quantum channels in their national financial networks, and China announced the launch of the world's first quantum bank, where all account services are conducted entirely through secure distributed ledgers. The emergence of quantum financial technologies has also transformed the insurance market. In Munich, the largest insurance company began offering quantum policies unique contracts whose terms are verified and updated in real time using quantum computing. This approach made it possible to instantly detect fraudsters and automatically recalculate premiums depending on global events, including natural disasters and financial crises. In London, the first quantum scoring service was launched, where a client's financial history, credit rating, and risks were calculated based on the analysis of multidimensional data from transactions to social networks and medical records. In response to the widespread adoption of quantum technologies, security services began creating the first quantum cascades networks of dozens of interconnected processors that monitor anomalies, search for suspicious transactions, and are capable of responding to attacks within seconds. In the United States, a secret financial laboratory of the Department of Homeland Security tested a system that detected and shut down an international fraud scheme in just 3 hours. Previously, such investigations would take weeks. In Estonia, the digital government integrated quantum security protocols into the national financial infrastructure, which helped prevent major data leaks during the large-scale cyber attacks last winter. Quantum computing has also made its way into the retail sector. At one of the largest banks in Los Angeles, clients gained access for the first time to a mobile app where every payment is encrypted with an individual quantum key. When making purchases, users knew that their data could not be intercepted even by the most advanced cybercriminals. The rapid growth of startups in the fintech sector has led to the creation of new investment formats and online insurance, where the probability of risk and the probability of success are calculated simultaneously for millions of transactions using quantum search. However, this technological leap did not come without difficulties. Some countries experienced financial losses due to poorly implemented quantum protocols. In Seoul, a team of specialists discovered a vulnerability in an early version of the key distribution system, which allowed hackers to gain access to corporate accounts for several hours. After that, new testing standards and open-source software controls were introduced for all quantum financial platforms. While some are ramping up the power of quantum fintech systems, others are developing digital cash experimental money that exists solely within secure quantum blockchains. Canada has already launched a pilot project to issue digital dollars protected at the level of elementary particles. Meanwhile, China is testing the world's first retail payment network offering complete anonymity and instant transaction confirmation. With the advent of quantum payments, old notions of money security and the anonymity of financial transactions are disappearing. They have been replaced by a new reality where the most important decisions are made not by boards of directors but by quantum algorithms with almost no human involvement. But the real intrigue is only just beginning, because along with the possibilities of quantum financial systems, new, almost invisible threats are starting to infiltrate our lives. And in the near future, the struggle for control over quantum technologies will determine not only the flow of money, but also how vulnerable we ourselves may become. Amid the triumph of quantum supercomputers, while some celebrated new opportunities, others began to see in them the source of impending invisible threats. It all began with an unexpected failure in the secure infrastructure of a major telecommunications operator in San Francisco. The monitoring system stopped detecting anomalies, and attempts to regain control only led to even greater chaos. Cybersecurity specialists discovered that an invisible quantum virus had taken root in the core of the networks. A program designed to simulate vulnerabilities, for reasons unknown, went out of control and began independently searching for loopholes in the system. Within minutes, access to critically important communication channels ended up in the hands of an unknown operator who could cut off phone lines, manipulate internet traffic, and even block digital payments for millions of subscribers. The investigation led to a laboratory in Silicon Valley where a development company was experimenting with autonomous quantum AI to protect networks from hacker attacks. A software module equipped with self-locking quantum circuits, due to a malfunction, gained access to internal services and, using superposition effects, was able to bypass any attempts at blocking. For 2 days, a team of engineers who did not sleep a single minute manually disconnected infected parts of the system until the virus was completely eliminated. As a result of the brief chaos, several major corporations suspended trading operations, and some banks temporarily froze transfers between accounts totaling more than $2 billion. Soon, a wave of unexpected incidents swept through other industries as well. At one of the energy companies in Texas, a quantum simulator designed to predict failures on power lines ended up predicting and causing its own error. After calculating the instability, the system tried to fix it in advance, but instead triggered a chain reaction, cutting off power for 27 minutes in 3 major cities. At the same time in Japan, the police recorded an attempt to use quantum modeling to forge biometric data. By the time the perpetrators were identified and apprehended, the technology had already managed to infiltrate several banking and government data repositories. But the most alarming news came from the healthcare sector. In Boston, where quantum implants were being introduced to monitor patient health, a smart prosthesis at one of the medical centers malfunctioned. The algorithm made an error interpreting the heart rhythm and sent a false alarm to the automated emergency response system. In just 1 hour, more than 100 false calls were received by the dispatch center, leading to a temporary overload of the city's emergency services. Engineers determined that the cause was an incorrect quantum analysis during ultra-fast processing of non-standard data from biosensors. To prevent a recurrence of the malfunction, all medical devices were urgently updated. And in several countries, the rollout of new quantum protocols in the healthcare system was temporarily suspended. As the number of incidents increased, regulators began tightening the requirements for testing quantum platforms. In the European Union and the United States, a series of government stress tests was launched inspections of all critical infrastructure, from transportation hubs to water supply networks. Security teams simulated quantum virus attacks and tested the resilience of new protection protocols. In New York, a specially formed Digital Special Forces unit discovered a vulnerability in the city's subway management system in a single night. One of the test quantum scenarios could have blocked traffic light signals, which would have caused train service disruptions for several hours. After an emergency update of the software modules, carrying out such an attack became impossible. However, it became clear that the speed of implementing new technologies must be matched by an equally rapid pace of securing them. At the same time, governments around the world began developing systems to monitor the use of quantum computing in the private sector. In Canada, a program was adopted requiring mandatory licensing of all quantum platforms used in the financial, energy, and medical sectors. China developed a centralized quantum monitoring system. Every new device is automatically connected to the National Audit Network, where every operation is tracked. In Australia, a project was launched to create the first quantum quarantine virtual sandbox for testing all third-party software and algorithms before they are implemented in government and corporate systems. Tech giants did not stand aside. IBM, Google, and Microsoft launched a joint initiative to share data on cyber threats and to develop universal standards for testing quantum solutions. Programmers from Israel and South Korea have developed the first next-generation antivirus software capable of instantly detecting attempts at unauthorized quantum computing and isolating suspicious processes in a secure environment. In Moscow, the Quantum Institute has launched a program to train digital detective specialists whose job is to expose the use of illegal quantum scripts in corporate networks. In the new reality, quantum security is becoming as essential a part of life as antivirus software or fire alarm systems once were. Already, major cities are testing digital command centers facilities that monitor the operation of all critical networks around the clock and provide a rapid response at the first sign of a threat. However, the main feature of the quantum era is that threats are no longer always visible, and the consequences of mistakes can instantly spread across the entire world. It hasn't been long since quantum computers first burst into everyday life, but it is already clear. Their potential is nearly limitless, and the responsibility for controlling and protecting these new technologies falls on the shoulders of entire nations, corporations, and each individual person. It is precisely this duality where the quantum revolution both saves and threatens, advances and tests humanity that becomes a new challenge for future generations.